There's a lot of amazing things to see in California, but there's a lot of not so amazing tourist attractions as well. In this video, I'm gonna explore the worst tourist attractions in California. Seaport Village in San Diego is a 14-acre waterfront entertainment complex. It opened in 1980, and it's intended to recreate a harbor setting from 100 years ago. The problem is that it hasn't really had a facelift since the 1980s either, and it's in dire need of some renovation. The place is full of expensive restaurants selling crappy food and expensive shops selling useless trinkets. Like most places in California, in other words, but it's dialed up to 11 here. There's an art gallery here, and you can go on a seal tour, and I think you can take a ride on an old carousel as well. But there really isn't all that much to see or do here. This place was probably magnificent when it opened, but that was more than 40 years ago now. Until they shape up this place, it's definitely one of the worst tourist attractions in California. But I have to say that it's still an absolutely gorgeous spot by the waterfront. Look at the Golden Gate Bridge, isn't it marvelous? It almost glistens like gold in the sunlight, and that must be how it got its name, right? Wrong, the name comes from the Golden Gate Strait that it runs across. And the orange-like color of the bridge was actually just supposed to be a primer at first. It's one of the most famous landmarks of San Francisco, and it's a beloved tourist attraction. And I don't really know why. It's a bridge, that's all it is. It's a nice-looking bridge, and it was a marvel of engineering when it was built. I don't have a problem with it, but it's just a bridge. It's quite simply one of the most overrated tourist attractions in the city, and in all of California. And bloody hell, it's windy here as well, but I guess that I can't blame the bridge for that. The Hollywood sign is an American landmark and a cultural icon. It's viewed by millions of people every year, and I have a feeling that most of them come away with a slight sense of disappointment. And that's understandable, because in the end, it's just a couple of white letters up there on a hill. The sign has been there since 1923, when it spelled out Hollywoodland instead. As I'm sure you know, it was just intended to be a local advertisement, but they left the letters up there because people kinda liked it. It's been repaired and replaced many times. In 1978, it was replaced with an all-steel structure, for example. And people haven't always liked it. In 1949, it was called an eyesore and a detriment to the community. But through it all, it's been kept up. So now 50 million people per year can watch this old advertisement from 1923. And they can all come away with a feeling of disappointment, saying, "Was that it?" For a long time, I've had a mental image of SeaWorld San Diego as a magical place where you can see the majestic beauty of orcas and sharks and other aquatic animals. And that's technically true. You can see a lot of animals here, but it's not as magical as I imagined. People online say that the park has gone downhill massively in the last decade. It's more commercialized and more run down than it used to be. There are merchants everywhere trying to sell you something, and a lot of the exhibits have been removed. The park is also understaffed and not as maintained as it used to be. And of course, there's the whole debate about keeping orcas in captivity. In 2013, the movie Blackfish stirred up a lot of controversy, and it has been proven that orcas suffer immensely from being kept in captivity. And so do dolphins, and just about every other animal as well. So SeaWorld San Diego is a park that's gone downhill since its glory days, and there are also ethical and moral concerns about the whole concept. Oh, and it's really expensive as well. Overall, I think it's safe to say that this is a place that belongs in a list of overrated tourist attractions in California. Venice Beach is a beautiful boardwalk along the Pacific coast, and it's an iconic spot in LA. It used to be a beach resort where the Hollywood elite visited to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Later, it was transformed into a mecca for artists and counterculture people, but these days, it's mostly a tourist trap. Things to do include taking a stroll along the boardwalk, where you can see hordes of tourists and indulge in crappy street food. Or you can visit the famous Muscle Beach and feel bad about that big burrito you had for lunch. Decades ago, the skate park was filled with edgy skateboarders pushing the limits, but these days it's mostly filled with kids filming their first ollie to show off on TikTok. Venice Beach is still a beautiful place, but it's also an overcrowded and touristy mess, and it's no longer the iconic tourist attraction that it once was. San Francisco, a city full of history and diverse culture. One of the most famous areas of San Francisco is the Fisherman's Wharf, with its activities and restaurants and boat tours. And sea lions, apparently. I was thinking of reusing some of my comments about the Seaport village in San Diego and make a joke that these places are basically the same, but that wouldn't have worked. This area has a much longer history than the Seaport village, and it's a much bigger place as well, with more things to do. But there's still overpriced crappy restaurants here, and tourist traps of all kinds. So is it good that there's more to do here? It's just more of the kitschy touristy things after all. The number of things to do doesn't take away from the fact that it's a crowded and overrated tourist area. I was thinking of including the Brea Tar Pits in this list, but then I visited the place. Many people online complained about it, but I guess that's mostly school kids who were tired of being dragged here by their schools. In fact, it's a really interesting look at prehistoric California. Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills is the most luxurious shopping street in LA. It's filled with the world's most expensive brands and the world's most well-known fashion houses. And apparently a bunch of bloody TikTokers as well. Rodeo Drive is called the intersection of luxury, fashion and entertainment. And it's also a really boring place to visit. Let's face it, most of us aren't gonna buy a new Prada bag or Balenciaga shoes. Most of us are gonna shop where mere mortals shop. So what's the appeal of visiting a high-end shopping street like this? To imagine that one day you'll do all your shopping here. Yeah, right. It's a pretty enough place, but it's definitely overrated as a tourist attraction. And I'd better get out of here before someone called security on me. They probably don't want a Swedish bum hanging around their precious little stores. This place is pretty useless. Why did I ever come here? San Diego Old Town is described as having a quaint atmosphere with streets full of historic culture. The Old Town homepage claims that this place has unique shopping, amazing restaurants, and tons of culture. What they conveniently forgot to mention is that it's a commercialized and touristy area filled with very little authenticity at all. The houses are old, and it is a place full of history, but it's also filled with people trying to sell you all kinds of things you don't really need. I love the old adobe houses, and the churches and the saloons, but it all feels a little bit too much like a theme park rather than an old town. This is quite possibly the very definition of a tourist trap. I like coming here, but I like it more for the spectacle of seeing such an over-commercialized spot than for any genuine history it has to offer. If you like roller coasters, Six Flags Magic Mountain is one of the best amusement parks in the world. It has some of the best roller coasters that you can find anywhere. It also has some of the worst crowds that you can find anywhere. It can take you hours to get on a ride. The lines there are infamous, and they also try to sell you all kinds of expensive skip-the-line options. It also has the most expensive parking out of all amusement parks, and the admission tickets themselves cost a fortune. On top of that, their online ticketing system often fails as well, and they give you random errors when you try to buy a discounted ticket. And then they want you to buy a ticket at the gate instead, for $40 or $50 more. I hate having Six Flags Magic Mountain on this list, because they have some world-class rides. But it's also one of the most greedy parks in the world, with horrible crowds. Six Flags Magic Mountain is, unfortunately, one of the most overrated tourist attractions in California. Now, what's the worst tourist attraction in California? What's my number one pick? The number one spot goes to Yosemite National Park. Just kidding, put down those pitchforks. Yosemite is extremely popular, which means that it's extremely crowded and just a little bit too touristy. But it's also an absolutely gorgeous place. The sheer natural beauty of this park and the sheer scale of it is just breathtaking. As is walking uphill, of course. Yosemite National Park is not one of the worst tourist attractions in California. Hollywood, the city of dreams, or possibly the city of nightmares, depending on who you ask. There's a lot to like about Hollywood. The weather... yeah, I guess that's it. There's a lot to dislike about Hollywood too. It's run down and it's crowded with tourists, and I'm not making things better by being here either. But there's one thing in particular to dislike about Hollywood. One thing that's supposed to be a top tourist attraction. I'm of course talking about the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Wow, it's a bunch of stars in the sidewalk. How wonderful. And those stars all have names. I can look for my favorite actor and have a picture taken of myself next to a star with their name. That's basically it. That's what you do on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's a miserable excuse for a tourist attraction. It's not spectacular in any way, and it's not worth making a detour for. Krakow also has a Walk of Fame, by the way. It's called the Avenue of Stars. That one is at least in a scenic location by the water. This one, yeah, it's not exactly as scenic. The Hollywood Walk of Fame is definitely the worst tourist attraction in California. And that's about it. That was my list of the worst and most overrated tourist attractions in California. Which ones did I miss? Let me know in the comments. Either way, like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.